NIS2 is the new legal framework of the European Union aimed at ensuring a high level of cybersecurity and resilience against cyber threats. The aim of the directive is to protect critical infrastructure, digital services, and information systems from cyber attacks and to increase cooperation between member states. Due to the scope of the issue of the NIS2 directive, this short presentation focuses only on the parts related to control of supply chains. New organizational measures introduced in our company in connection with NIS2. New technical measures applied in our products to increase their cybersecurity. The NIS2 directive is not the first European directive dealing with cybersecurity, as it follows on from its predecessor, the NIS directive. The original NIS directive focused on ensuring a minimum level of cybersecurity and cooperation between member states. NIS2 extends its scope to a wider range of organizations and sectors. The estimate is 15 to 20 times. NIS2 introduces the obligation to report cyber incidents to selected national authorities. These authorities then have an obligation to cooperate and contribute to ensuring cybersecurity at the EU level by exchanging information. NIS2 also provides for the possibility of sanctions for non-compliance with the requirements of the directive, including financial sanctions. And what is a significant change from our point of view is the requirement to control supply chains. The aim of supply chain control is mainly the elimination of technical and non-technical risks related to suppliers. A technical risk can be, for example, an insufficient level of security of the supplied technologies. A non-technical risk associated with the supplier can be understood as an opaque ownership structure, or its direct connection to enemy states and their security forces. Given the tense geopolitical situation, it is probably not necessary to explicitly specify the list of enemy states. The originators of cyber attacks and espionage against the EU are mostly Eastern dictatorships. Of course, as stated on the slide, it does not make sense from a cybersecurity point of view to investigate suppliers and manufacturers of chairs. However, NIS2 requirements already apply to suppliers, subcontractors, and manufacturers of other technologies. Therefore, if you are a supplier of IT technologies to entities to which NIS2 applies, NIS2 will also apply to you. According to NIS2, a customer belonging to the essential or important group can, for example, demand fulfillment of the requirements of Article 21 of NIS2 within the terms of the contract, and you should make the same demands on your IT technology suppliers. Article 21 of the NIS2 directive imposes several cybersecurity obligations on obliged entities. The obligation to take appropriate measures to increase the resilience of its networks and information systems against cyber threats. Duty to monitor your networks and information systems to identify potential security incidents and threats. Obligation to report serious incidents and security breaches to a national authority. Duty to cooperate with national authorities and other digital service providers in dealing with cyber incidents. The obligation to set up cyber incident response plans and their testing, and many others. All of these obligations, along with others, are contained in ISO 27001. In order to be considered a safe supplier in the future, we started the process of preparing for the certification of all development and production processes according to the ISO 27001 standard in 2022. We successfully completed ISO 27001 certification in May 2023. Adherence to and improvement of the set ISO 27001 policies is verified every year by an independent auditing company. In regulated industries, the law will affect medium and large businesses. However, the directive requires member states to define small and micro-enterprises that meet specific criteria that indicate a key role for the company falling within the scope of the directive. Typically, this is, for example, a DNS provider. The exact application or extension of scope is within the competence of the EU member states. On the contrary, not applying the requirements to mandatory entities is not possible. That was a bit of a boring NIS2 theory to begin with. In practice, however, it will be of considerable importance in procurement procedures. In legal practice, discussions on the issue of priorities can be expected when applying NIS2, whether or not it is possible to limit the free market in the interest of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity should logically have a higher priority. This follows, for example, from the decision of the Czech Office for the Protection of Economic Competition. However, it is always true that the decision must be made on the basis of a processed risk analysis, and all decisions must be properly justified. That was all about the legislative requirements at the beginning. The next part of the presentation is devoted to technical measures related to cybersecurity. It is always good not to build security on one measure, but on several that complement each other. The very first measure we recommend to start with is to protect against physical access to the device. It is easily prevented by placing the device in the OH series switchboard with door opening detection. When the switchboard is opened, it opens the door contact, which is connected to the alarm input of the switch or PLC. The state of the inputs can be monitored via the SNMPv3 protocol. At the beginning of 2024, we will start production of a new type of switchboard with backup 48 volts power supply for the installed switch, door opening detection, by detecting tampering with the switchboard, remote battery test, and other functions required by the EN 50131-6 standard. In this case, the output will not be SNMP, but are I/O modules with BO81 resistive outputs. Another important measure increasing the cybersecurity of the IT system is the provision of redundant communication routes. The requirement to secure them is also mentioned directly in the EN 62676-1-2 standard applicable to surveillance video systems in security applications. LAN ring industrial switches can be connected to an optical ring, which is the most advantageous due to the configuration speed of up to 30 milliseconds, but also in mesh complex topologies controlled by spanning tree protocols. The status of all ports can be monitored by SNMP protocol. A redundant or backed up power supply also makes a significant contribution to minimizing the occurrence of failures. In some applications, such as alarm systems subject to EN 50131 standards, a backup power supply is directly required. For these reasons, all our industrial switches have at least 2 independent power inputs, and for outdoor switchboards, we also offer variants with backup power supply. 2 to 3 redundant power inputs are available as standard for all LAN ring switches. We also have separate power supplies and switchboards with backup power in our assortment. At the end of 2023, they underwent an important change. We have discontinued supplies of backup sources with a power of 110 watts and replaced them with a new type with a power of 240 watts. For the variant being prepared for certification according to EN 50131-6, a 480 watts power source is available. Quantum-resistant encryption algorithms are designed to resist attacks based on quantum computing. Quantum computers have the potential to fundamentally change the world of cryptography, as they might eventually be able to break down some mathematical problems, which are the basis of current cryptographic systems. A typical example is, for example, RSA encryption based on mathematical problems that are difficult to solve with classical computers. However, quantum computers have the potential to solve these problems faster using algorithms such as Schiess algorithm. Therefore, we currently use the AES algorithm for LAN ring switches, which is considered quantum resistant with a key length of 256 bits. However, this is not the end state. In the future, we expect further steps to increase the level of security. For F-series LAN ring switches, we have applied a set of technical measures to ensure high confidence that the devices are working as they should. The measures help protect customers' infrastructure from internal and external threats. To ensure that only authorized firmware is running on the target METEL device, we have implemented secure boot and firmware encryption and authorization. You can see the firmware risk analysis in the following screenshots. It includes risk identification and mitigation measures. Please note that all information provided is valid for bootloader version 5 and application version 70. Ensuring a high level of security starts with the software to manage our IP devices. Simuland, which has been used for many years. The internal version of Simuland we are working on in development has Simuland for .exe signature validation and DLL hash checking turned off for our purposes, which more consistently separates the development and production environments. Conversely, the production version of Simuland distributed to users has exe file signature validation and DLL file hash checking enabled. For signing, we use the so-called extended validation certificate with extended verification, which is a standard for software development. Its big advantage is extended verification, thanks to which even after the expiration of our purchased end certificate, the application with a valid timestamp is still valid. The certificate itself is protected against misuse by storing it on a USB token with a pin in a secure area. Realistically, two people who are not involved in the development have access to the token. Thus, the developers themselves cannot release a validly signed application, or to release a version that does not have these security features, because a valid release of Simuland is conditional on the use of our build script and USB token. The process we use to final build the app and package it into the installer uses standard developer tools on Windows 10 or 11. This also applies to the algorithms used for encryption, signing and hashing. We apply already implemented software standards according to their valid documentation, which in our case is the Microsoft Net Framework. However, the security guarantee ends when the user downloads the installer, for example, to an infected computer. In that case, we cannot guarantee anything from our position regarding its safe operation. This also applies to various Windows security features and their settings on the user's computer. If the user has file origin verification turned off, they may install a fake or otherwise corrupted Simuland. Assuming that the user's environment is not corrupted or compromised in any way, Simuland automatically checks the application signature plus CRC of the DLL files loaded at startup upon startup. Subsequently, it checks the CRC of the DLL files loaded during the application's runtime. If you want to be 100% sure of the originality of the application, we recommend opening the Digital Signature tab before the first launch, both in the installer and in the application via the right button, and verify its origin and validity in it. The next risk that should be considered is an unauthorized firmware image tampering on the computer managed by the user. METEL provides firmware images that are encrypted and digitally signed. The encryption keys are only known to METEL and devices. All new firmware images, starting with version 70, are digitally signed. Also, the Simuland application, which contains the latest firmware images, is signed. Risk must be also considered an unauthorized firmware image modification while the image is being transferred to the device. The firmware image is transferred via an encrypted channel. If the firmware image is received by the device, then it is fully validated. This validation consists of 3 steps. Step 1. Verification before decryption. Step 2. Decryption. Step 3. Verification after decryption. After validation, the image is stored in the internal flash memory. The third risk is access to the flash memory, where the firmware image is stored. Before storing the firmware in the device memory, it verifies its image. The image signature is also verified when it is read. This happens, for example, after starting the device, when the image is loaded into RAM. The fourth risk is an unauthorized firmware image modification. The electronic signature RSA for 096 is always verified before applying the firmware image. The fifth risk is an unauthorized bootloader image modification. The bootloader image is not published, and it is located at the read-only section of the memory. The initial step of the boot procedure is to verify the hash of the image. Invalid code is not executed. These slides are not an exhaustive list of all risks. Do not hesitate to contact METEL if you are interested in more details. In Simuland, we have also highlighted warnings about whether firmwares are up to date or out of date. We are continuously adding new functionalities to them and correcting detected errors. For this reason, update the firmware regularly. The latest firmware versions are included in Simuland, so there is no need to download them separately. Moving to firmwares with a new bootloader also changes the entire upgrade process. The firmware is first fully uploaded to the device, where it is verified, and only then is it applied. iPlog control units will also be secured at the beginning of the year in the same way that we secured the mass-produced LAN ring switches. Secure Boot will protect iPlogs in particular against the launch of an unauthorized operating system or a system damaged by rootkits. All products manufactured by us and services provided are fully under our control from the beginning of their development. Development and production technologies are located in the Czech Republic, which is a member of the European Union. We develop products from the very design of the scheme, through the design of printed circuit boards, mechanics to firmware. The technological background also enables us to carry out a number of the necessary tests in-house. The National Defense Authorization Act, abbreviated as NDAA, is a law of the United States of America that is passed annually by Congress to authorize defense and security spending. This act establishes the budget for the United States Department of Defense and includes various provisions related to defense and security. Among other things, the NDAA banned the sale or installation of products by several Chinese companies. The restrictions also apply to products of these companies supplied under a different brand name. Even such products are subject to increased control or restrictions. All our products contain processors, FPGAs, CPLDs, and other programmable components exclusively from manufacturers headquartered in democratic countries. So they are NDAA compliant. VLAN and QoS setup is a simple and effective risk prevention tool in all applications with multiple technologies and diverse user groups. VLANs will divide the network into independent segments, and QoS will also enable the distribution of network traffic according to priorities. For example, VLAN and QoS tools must be used when transmitting RS-485 over LAN in systems subject to EN 50131-1 certification. If this setting is not carried out, low transmission latency or the risk of interception or modification of transmitted data cannot be guaranteed. Currently, selected models of LAN ring switches are certified as a transmission route of the asset, Galaxy and MB Secure systems. In the middle of 2024, their regular recertification will take place, which takes place every 3 years. At the beginning of 2024, we also plan to complete the preparations for the certification of the alarm inputs of our LAN ring switches and outdoor switchboards of the OH series. The goal is to enable the installation of switches in an outdoor environment in accordance with the requirements of the EN 50131-6 standard. The requirement for a 60-hour backup must be observed in all applications where LAN ring switches are used as a transmission route for system buses of alarm systems. We have certified this use with the ASET, Galaxy and MB Secure systems. In order to maintain the backup time, The PO power must be turned off when the 230 volts power is lost. This can be done in two ways: event management of switches or via the iPlock control unit. It can control the switching off of dozens of switches at once and take into account the temperature in the switchboards. In reality, at normal temperatures, the cameras will only be switched off after tens of minutes. That's all for the content of this webinar. Finally, I would like to mention some information about the test procedure and the subsequent issuance of certificates. Tests are only mandatory for people registering projects on our website and in the case of applying for an extended warranty of 5 years from the end of production. In both cases, you must have a valid certificate and activated VIP access on our website. The VIP account is activated automatically after passing the test. We consider a test with at least 2/3 of the answers correct to be a successful composite test. You have 2 attempts to pass the test each day. The validity of the certificate and VIP access to the website is 6 months. During this time, you can extend your VIP status at any time by taking another test. Another way to get VIP access is to participate in face-to-face training. In this case, your VIP access is activated for 1 year. Finally, thank you for your attention and I look forward to hearing from you on the next webinar.